Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Minnesota Vikings postgame show. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and joining me always, as he does after games, from U.S. Bank Stadium, it's Viking color analyst Pete Bercich. Pete, I got to ask you this right away. I know as a former NFL defensive player and an NFL defensive coach, how could you not love the performance by the Vikings against this explosive Los Angeles Rams defense today?
Oh, you had to love it, and I think the thing is, and the key. When you start looking in the numbers and you look at Todd Gurley's production, and his 10 touchdowns were more than twice what anyone else on that roster had. The Vikings never let him get ahead of steam. I don't know what he ended with, but he got to halftime with 26 yards on the ground. Here's a guy that's been getting over 100 per game, well over 100, well north of 100, and that was guys up front, Johnson, Linval Joseph. Those guys were so physical up front. The Rams were not able to run the football like they normally do. And when you can't run, it makes that play-action passing game a lot less effective. And then it was just, it was just one thing led to another. And being physical with Goff would be the other thing. We sacked him one time on a Herculean-type sack there from Daniil Hunter. But Eric Kendricks lit him up after he threw the football a number of times. And, he's not used to getting hit. And we talked about that in the numbers going into the game and just how when he gets stacked multiple times in a game, how his performance goes down. And all of that really held true today. So great job by the defense. I mean, the Rams scored right off the bat, and you would think it's going to be a long day after that. But a lot of credit to the defense. They made a lot of adjustments.
Well, I'll tell you what, you talk about those adjustments, and before we even get to that, the answer to your question was he only got 11 yards rushing in the second half. He had 37 for the game on 16 carries. He really wasn't a factor, and you're right. When Goff dropped back in the late third quarter, in the fourth quarter, his feet were not set. He was always moving. He was looking for that pass rush.
He was, and some of those passes were not on time and not on target, and offenses are a lot about rhythm. And when you can disrupt that rhythm, whether you're physical with the receivers on the outside or physical with the defensive line up front, anytime you slow the rhythm down of an offense, especially an offense like that likes to spread everything out, a lot of short passes, and really all of their deep shots and those things all come off play fakes. And when the DBs and the safeties are not, mainly the safeties are not really acknowledging the run fake, it opens things up. Doesn't open it up for the offense, and the defense is able to sit on some stuff. So, it's hard, though, to pick a winner. I mean, when you put 452 yards up against a solid Rams defense, especially their front, and get well over 140 yards on the ground, Latavius Murray just rolling, Jerick McKinnon doing a great job as well. This offensive line, I think, is kind of the hidden story here. And how well they're playing. I mean, Aaron McDonald is one of the best players in the NFL, and the only time you heard from him was when he was hitting the quarterback late or jumping off sides. And, I mean, that's neutralizing a premier player. And if we're able to do that on a consistent basis, I mean, look out. This offense is firing on all cylinders.
Well, I'll tell you, and you mentioned that offensive line, and they've been impressive for the last several weeks. I mean, today they help the two running backs rack up 170 yards for the Vikings as part of that 452 yards, and that's all while the offensive line for the sixth game in a row didn't give up a sack. And, while the talent is certainly upgraded from a year ago, Pete, I mean, how did offensive line coach Tony Sparano get this unit to gel so quickly and almost be elite at this point?
Yeah, I think Pat Elflein has been everything we thought he could be at center and more. And I think the other kind of underrated part of that pass protection are the running backs. I mean, both Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray are very, very good in pass protection. And it's more than just being physically able to do that. I mean, we saw that with Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson was as physical of a running back as we'd ever seen. He could pass block for sure. He had the talent to. It's just he didn't always know where the checks were and where he was supposed to go. And it's the easiest way to turn an athlete into a subpar athlete is to overload him mentally. Well, both Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray are dialed in on the pass protections, doing a great job picking up blitzers, picking up linebackers up the middle, and that all adds together. So it's not, and it's tight ends too. It's not just the offensive line. It's that entire group is playing so well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. To me, the time of possession tells a big story for the Viking dominance today. The Vikings had the ball 37 minutes for time of possession. The Rams only had 22, and in the fourth quarter, you could visibly see it. The Ram defense was gassed, and that's when you can really take advantage of almost any defense, no matter how good they are.
No, you're absolutely right, and that was huge because the Rams are averaging, I believe, 32 minutes of time of possession per game, and it's you start wearing those guys out, and then all of a sudden they become human. I mean, they really do, and that was, time of possession for an offense, and that's something that is kind of a backstory in football. Period, is that when the more your offense is on the field, the greater the advantage. The more they can wear down a defense because defenders have to run to the whistle. An offensive lineman just has to make sure that his job is completed. So, you take 50 plays on offense and 50 plays on defense, that defense is going to be a lot more tired than the offense, a lot more substituting on the offensive side of the ball. All those things add up. A dominating performance on both sides. That Anthony Harris forced fumble was a huge, huge play. It kept the Rams off the scoreboard. I mean, it went better than you could have hoped. It didn't start out the way you thought it would, but man, you look at the score and you don't watch this game, you think, the Vikings just kind of, rolled out there and did it. I mean, we could have put 30 on them. I mean, we should have, at least 27 if you make one of the two field goals. And that's another positive point is that we missed two field goals and nobody flinched. The defense didn't flinch. The offense didn't flinch. Nobody let that affect them. They just kept playing their game. And it turns out we didn't need the two field goals to win.
Yeah, I tell you, you talk about not flinching. I mean, Mike Zimmer put a little mystery into this quarterback decision when he announced on Wednesday. He's going to continue to roll with Case Keenum after Keenum had led the team to a 5-game winning streak. And today, Case rewarded his coach for that confidence with a 280-yard performance and a 100.8 quarterback rating. And most importantly, Pete, no mistakes against this opportunistic Ram defense. Your thoughts on Keenum's performance today?
That was one of the concerns we had going into the game, and the pregame is talking about is that Case Keenum doesn't try to do too much against his old team. And, he was fired up coming out of the field before the game. You watch him, and he was very, very smart. And I think last week he played a great game against Washington except for 2 plays. 2 plays in a row. He, threw interceptions, and that was a subtle but important reminder to him that if you don't set your feet, if you don't do the things the right way, you're going to make mistakes. And so I think that brought him back down to earth a little bit. He made a lot of great decisions, threw the ball away when he was supposed to, and his mobility makes up for what he isn't as a Bradford, as a pocket passer. I mean, he can extend plays, and he did that today. A couple of them were just miracles, him getting out, getting away from the pass rush. So his combination, his mobility, I think, is making up for, maybe him not being the best pocket passer that there ever has been. But he's out routes some of the ones that he threw, that pass that he threw in double coverage to Kyle Rudolph when he had 2 linebackers draped all over him. I mean, those are elite throws that he's making at key points in the game. So, I mean, you go on and on. You have a team that's 8-2. Top 10 offense and a top 10 defense, you start to run out of people to credit. People to say, hey, these guys are doing great, and these guys are doing great. I mean, this entire team is playing at a very, very high level, and that's what you want at this time of year.
And, one of those players that's all of a sudden playing at a high level, Viking fans, they were all morbidly depressed when Dalvin Cook went down with that ACL injury. And at first, Jarrett McKinnon filled in admirably. And now it is, in fact, Latavius Murray. He seems fully healed from that off-season ankle surgery, a lot more pop in his step. And now he seems to be the bell cow with 95 yards rushing today.
Right. When it was first down and goal to go, I believe it was about on the 2 or 3 yard line. They handed the ball off twice. The first one didn't get much. The second one, Latavius Murray just pounded it in. That takes a little something out of a defense, and it gives a lot of confidence to the offense that they can get 2 yards when the defense is doing everything that it can do to stop you on the ground. So I credit the offensive line, but that's why we brought Latavius Murray in. Don't forget, a year ago we were awful on 3rd down and short, 4th down and short, goal line with inside the 2 yard line. I mean, I'll never forget that Sendejo interception last year. It's brought to the 2, and then 4 downs, we couldn't even get 2 yards. I mean, look at the difference that Latavius Murray has made in that respect, and behind a much more improved offensive line. I mean, this is great stuff. And Latavius Murray, again, he's a big man, 230 pounds, 6'3". He's a big man. If he gets ahead of steam and gets to that second level, wow, watch out. And he's not greedy, because right at the end, he got a big 7-yard gain, and instead of going out of bounds, he kept the ball in bounds, kept the clock moving. So he's smart too, and that's the kind of player that you want to have.
Absolutely. And, one more guy on offense. I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the name of Adam Thielen. I mean, for me, Pete, it's almost like there's nothing that he can't do at this point in time. He's nearing 1,000 yards for the season, and it's hard for me to even believe that he was backing up Cordero Patterson just a couple years ago.
Well, no question about it. It's been since Sidney Rice that the Minnesota Vikings in 2009 have had a 1,000-yard receiver. It's been that long, and both he and Diggs are legitimate threats. Thielen does everything well. He still run blocks. He does all these things that wide receivers don't necessarily do. His quickness is second to none, and you get the Rams to run a zero blitz. Now, I don't know if that was a mental error or not, but they did not have a deep safety, and Thielen catches a hitch, missed tackle, and he is gone. So you can't fall asleep on that guy, and if you try to single cover him one-on-one in space, you're risking it. And you know what? If Thielen's not out there, Diggs is out there. So you have a 1-2 combination in those receivers that has been outstanding and continues to be, and Thielen is showing no signs of slowing down.
It's really funny, too, Pete. A couple years ago in camp when Mike Wallace was there and it was Jarius Wright and Cordero Patterson, we asked each individual receiver who would win a 100-yard dash, and every one of them sneakily said, oh, it'd be me easy. And surprisingly enough, so did Adam Thielen, and I'm not so sure he wasn't right. He's fast.
He is. I mean, he is, and he's quick too. He's sure-handed. I mean, he does all those things, and you love his story. A guy that no one you counted out, Minnesota State, to come out in the NFL and be one of the top receivers. I mean, it goes to show that if you continue to work your trade, get better, improve physically, improve mentally every single week, catch 1 million footballs in the off season, that you can do that. And so his story, and same thing with Stephon Diggs. He was not highly drafted either. I mean, he kind of came late. And look at all these first-round draft picks that we've had at wide receiver, and your free agent and your fifth rounder are the ones leading the team. I mean, that's just football, and I love it. That's what I love about this team. And these guys that are drafted late, guys like Thielen, they're not going to take this for granted. They're not going to say the work is done. These guys have earned their spot and worked their way up the food chain, so to speak. They're not going to let up on the gas pedal. These guys are having too much fun.
And I'll tell you what, that's always the great thing after a win. You get to go home, enjoy it with your family. But they don't get that long, and unfortunately, their reward is to play on Thanksgiving. And the Lions won today on a late field goal versus Chicago, and now they need to go into Detroit, a team they lost to earlier this year in Minnesota, and they try to seal this NFC North where they currently have a 2-game lead. Now, a loss would put Detroit just 1 game behind the Vikings. So, what I wanted you to do is tell the fans the difficulties you experienced, because you played a couple of Thanksgiving Day games in your career, when you just have 4 days to turn it around after you have one of these physical games, and what the Vikings need to do to combat that, to win this game and pull away on the North.
Well, this is the kind of game where if you have veterans, it helps, because the veterans can do more mentally without having to get snaps in practice. Defensively, outside of Mackenzie Alexander, maybe, I mean, we're pretty veteran. Those guys are pretty smart. They can handle adjustments and handle changes, handle more game plan changes, throughout the week. And I look at this game, and you look at the Vikings now and the Lions now as they were, just a few short weeks ago when we played them. I think the Vikings have improved a hell of a lot more than the Lions have. And, this is a huge game because the Lions' schedule the rest of the way does not look, too bad. The Vikings, even after they play the Lions on a short week, you got to go to Atlanta. Then you got to go to Carolina. Then you're home against Cincinnati. I mean, there are some big games coming up, and when you have an opportunity like this to get technically, you get 3-game lead in your division, you cannot let this opportunity get by you, and you're buying yourself some cushion for later on down the road. But if you got a veteran team like this, then these guys are thinking big picture. They're not, they're going to do what they have to do to win the division, no question. But they're looking also for a bye coming up. They're looking for some home field advantage in the playoffs. I mean, there's a lot of other things now that are entering in that are about to be at stake here. And if you have a good, solid veteran team, they're gonna, that's what they're playing for. They're playing for the big picture, and they're playing to get themselves in the best possible spot they can come postseason.
And I'll tell you what, you being a member of that 1998 team, remember how much more enjoyable it was when you weren't seeing who else lost, but rather who you beat so badly. So rather than looking back, you hit those things you hit on. You're looking for home field advantage. You're looking for a bye week. You're looking for a lot of things while other teams are just scrambling to get in.
You're right, and it's a confidence that you have. It's a swagger, I guess, that you have. And, in 98 when things were not maybe going your way, you sat back, and when things happen that don't go your way, you go, all right, who's going to be the hero today? Who's going to step up and make a play? Losing teams, when things don't go the right way, they say, here we go again. That subtle difference is huge. And to have a 7-2 team come in here, I mean, you look at the national media, and they talked about even a week, just going into this weekend, the top teams in the NFC. What were they talking about? The Eagles. They're talking about the Saints. And then they were talking about the Rams, and a lot of times the Vikings didn't even enter that conversation. Well, I think that conversation gets turned on its head a little bit. Now you're looking at a Philadelphia team, a New Orleans team that just narrowly beat Washington at home. Washington was in field goal range late, and for some reason teams in New Orleans have a hard time staying in field goal position like we saw in 2009. And ultimately the Redskins ended up losing that football game. So gotta give the Saints some credit there, but it's a three horse race, I think, going the rest of the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the good news for fans, I guess, is you only have to wait 4 more days to see the team on the field, and that wraps up our Minnesota Vikings postgame show. Now, Pete and I will be back next week after the Vikings take on the Lions on Thanksgiving Day at Ford Field in Detroit. And don't forget to share your thoughts with Pete on Twitter, @VikeFans or @Pete Bercich, and he'll interact with you. And your final score today at U.S. Bank Stadium was the Minnesota Vikings 24 and the Los Angeles Rams 7 to raise the Viking record to 8-2. So until next week, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.